Evening and welcome everyone to a comic relief inspired event, a one-off comedy and mental health. I'm Patrick McGee. I'm joined this evening by my colleagues Tony Coward. Tony's going to wave. Wave, Tony. There we go. Paul Bassett-Davies and Amanda Lynn Baez. We'll be hearing more from them later on today, but we have a fantastic group here this evening. Thank you ever so much to everyone for coming along this evening, for making your very, very generous donations. Absolutely delighted that everyone's been able to chip in and give the money for a good cause. Just a few things, everyone's muted, but at key strategic points this evening, you will be unmuted so that you can absolutely hit the roof on your applause and appreciation. If you've got any questions or queries or comments, put them in the chat and only I will see them and I will share them as appropriate. Okay, so let's sit back and have a good time. I'm going to get straight on it now. One of the things I'm going to use this evening is called Menti. If you've not used it before, it absolutely doesn't matter. It will not impact on your enjoyment whatsoever. But if you do have Menti and you're able to log in, it's dead simple. You don't need an account. I'll walk you through it and we'll do a little bit of audience participation. You can keep your camera on or put your camera off. My suggestion is to keep it on. It's a lot more fun for everyone in the room if we can see your reactions to what people are saying. But it is, of course, in the end, going to be your individual decision around all that. Okay, so we're going to get straight into it. And again, just to say thank you to everyone for coming along this evening. So here we go. And we are recording the event this evening, not for distribution, but just purely for our own internal technical purposes. So we've got a schedule. You wouldn't believe that this is actually in any way organized, but here we go. I'm going to say a few words about laughter therapy to get it started. We're then going to hand over to Tony Coward, who is a Sony award-winning writer and stand-up comedian. We're going to then hand over to Paul Bassett-Davies to put a little bit of a serious slant on humour and mental health. Paul is author of several books. Please do not ask for mercy, as a refusal often offends. The Glade, Utter Folly, and Dead Writers in Rehab. Okay, so we then have, towards the end, Amanda Lynn Baez, who is, since the age of 15, all of 8 years ago, been acting, and since 20, been on the New York comedy stand-up circuit a mere 3 years ago. So Amanda is going to be our closing act this evening, and we'll be at a chance to ask questions of all those individuals through the chat function. Okay, so there's just more people just entering the waiting room, just to welcome them in. And then towards the end, we'll have a general Q&A after Amanda's slot, and we'll finish at round about 7 o'clock. Okay, and for those of you who've been with me on some of our training events, there are no CPD credits for this. There's no exam, there's no test. This is purely for fun and for charity. Okay, so let's get started then. The first thing I want you to do is to open up menti.com if you're able to do so on a tab in your browser, menti.com. It's completely optional, but it'll allow you to answer the questions that are going to pop up on the screen. And so once you've done that, it will ask you for an 8-digit PIN number. And that number this evening is 66549144. And that's on the screen. Don't worry about the space, just type in the 8-digit numbers. And it's already off and running. We can see that people are already giving their views on the different examples of comedy. Strangely, Mrs. Brown Boys is not running out in the lead. Who knew? Frasier getting a lot of good support. Talk, of course, about Frasier being brought back in again. And Fleabag continues to win every poll, even though it's no longer running. Okay, so this is how it works on Menti. You just open up a tab, or some people like doing it on their phone, separately from watching the event on a laptop or on their desktop. Ask you for a code number. It's completely anonymous. Just type in the number 66549144. Fantastic. So it looks like Frasier is winning the battle of the comedy programs. Let's see if we can probe our funny brain a little bit more. What is important to you and a friend? Now, this is a daft question because different friends give us different things, and friendships don't always look the same as the previous one. But if you had to put in order a range of characteristics that people often say are connected to friendship, what would you privilege? What would you prioritize and put in your ranking? So all you have to do is to go through your top three and give it a ranking, and the system will automatically anonymously gather all that information, and it will update the graph for us in real time. And there we go. So trustworthiness is into an early lead, with extroversion bringing up the rear. A good sense of humor is not doing so terrible. And then it goes down to the bottom. We do not value, whoops, there we go, back up again. So we can see how as different people put in their responses, the dynamic graph changes as we go through. So it's just a bit of fun and to encourage the engagement and interaction. So it sounds like those people who impetuously put in their ratings right away have valuing sense of humor a little bit less, and those that are doing it more laterally are valuing a good sense of humor. But of course, I don't think anyone would ever value a good sense of humor above loyalty or trustworthiness. It's no good having a laugh with someone if they then turn around and steal all your money or take away your boyfriend or girlfriend, I guess. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so those are the things that are important to us in a friend. How about humor and relationships? This is asking you to use this little slider to identify very simply your answer to two questions. First of all, do you make each of these four people laugh? And secondly, do they make you laugh? There are no right or wrong answers here, obviously, goes without saying. But overall, what are your thoughts? So I've just hidden the results just for the moment until we get a few on the board here. Let's see if there's any correlation between the people that make you laugh and the people that you make laugh within the bounds of these four. Okay, the results are coming in thick and fast. Let's see how it's stacking up. Okay, so my boss, I only make them laugh a little bit, and they don't make me laugh much either. But in terms of my partner, my best friend, my children, very, very similar in terms of the overall averages, as is indicated by circle 2, circle 3, and circle 4. What might be interesting, though, is if I put my cursor over here, there is a huge variation, which is what I was hoping to see, so that, you know, no matter where you are with your boss in terms of making them laugh or them making you laugh, there is probably somebody in the same boat, but such a wide range of variation there. Similarly, if you look at your partner, again, it's still in the top right-hand corner, but it's still quite a lot of variation there. And as more and more results come in, it updates in real time. Best friend, again, still solidly in the top right-hand corner. There's a reciprocity in the laughter, but again, a lot of differences. Someone here at the bottom, down here, down in the bottom right-hand corner, is saying, I make them laugh a lot, but they never make me laugh. Not sure what kind of friendship that is, but I'm sure it works for the people involved. Okay, so just an example there of how in different ways we reciprocate or not. And we're all different in terms of our connection between humor and relationships. Relationships, of course, are a huge element of support in terms of mental health and related issues. If you look at the official guidance on the National Institute for Health and Clinical Excellence, and where all the big documents about how psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, psychotherapists should help individuals with psychological challenges, you can search for the word laugh on their website. It's got over, what's 1.2 million documents, certainly over 1 million. Unfortunately, your search for laugh returned no results. So laughter is not an official part of NHS policy, which seems rather an oversight given the research we know that makes it important. It's not always the case that laughter and smiling means that the person is happy, of course, as famously the character of Bette Lynch in Coronation Street said, it's not a smile, it's a lid on a screen. Ken Dodd had a good fun trying to think about laughter and what makes us laugh, and said, and there's about 90 different versions of this quote. He said that Freud said that laughter is the outward expression of the repressed psyche, but then Freud never had to play the Glasgow Empire on a Saturday night. You can do humour training around the world. It's usually in groups, and the research shows it has a positive affect and life satisfaction, reduces depression, anxiety, and stress. And Shelley has done research on looking at how this works in practice. So you can train people to have a better relationship with humour. And it will help a little bit about depression, anxiety, and stress, not necessarily on its own, but in combination with other things. And here's actually an example of a very recent structure around trying to help individuals in a systematic way, in a group, use humour to identify some of their concerns, anxieties, maybe some aspects about self-esteem, and so on. So that's the way it can be structured. In any event, we now move on to structure. This is the official guide to applause, excitement for this event. We can't have, I don't mind people being happy and enjoying themselves, but not in an unstructured way. So this is what we'd like to do here. Everyone is muted. Everyone in a moment is going to be temporarily unmuted, and we're going to have big applause and cheer. And I don't want you all cheering and applauding at different times. So the cue is the word thank you, as in the phrase, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Tony Cowards. Thank you. Okay, so not on the word ladies, or on the word time, or even on the word Tony Cowards, even though I do know that the mere mention of Tony's name will bring many of you to the point of extreme joy and happiness. It's on the word thank you. That's what I want you to have your applause and your shouting. Okay, so let's try this then. I'm going to temporarily unmute everyone for that particular purpose. So let's see if we can do this. So you're going to have to unmute yourselves. I can't force you to unmute. So let's have everyone unmuting yourselves. And here we go then. Wait for it. Ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen.
It's time for Tony Cowards. Thank you.
Hey. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Tony. Tony, as I say, is a Sony award-winning writer and stand-up comedian, and he is going to give us the benefits of his thoughts right now. I'm going to open it up for Tony. Okay, Tony, over to you.
Am I on screen? I'm not on my screen. Love.
Okay, if you want to share, there you go. You can co-host.
Okay, cool. I can't see myself on my screen, but I don't know if everyone else can see me.
We can see you. Yeah, we can see you.
You can see me. Brilliant. Because I love doing these online gigs, especially when the technology works okay. But I don't know if you can you see the background behind me?
Yes, live at the Apollo.
Live at the Apollo. It's brilliant because these online gigs allow me to live out my fantasies that I don't get booked for. So I'm not actually on live at the Apollo, I'm afraid. This is just me feeding my ego. But good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Red Nose Day. It's lovely to be on here. Thank you very much. I've had quite a weird day today, I'll be honest with you. I woke up really early this morning. I had no idea where the sun had gone, and then it dawned on me. Yeah, I do stand up, as Patrick nicely introduced me there. Stand up comedian. It's not the only job I've ever had, though. I actually trained to be a locksmith. Ladies and gentlemen, trained to be a locksmith. Yeah, I studied at Yale. And I have to say that opened a lot of doors for me. I was also, for a little while, I was the manager of a struggling boat shop. I had the genius idea of lowering the ceilings, and of course, immediately sales went through the roof. So I live in Loughborough, in the East Midlands. I live with my girlfriend. Been with my girlfriend for a while now. I actually met my girlfriend while she was working at the zoo. Yeah, there she was in her uniform. Straight away, I thought she's a keeper. So I come from, the weird thing is that my surname is Cowards, but weirdly I actually come from a military background. My dad was in the army. My dad was a Royal Engineer who specialised in clearing minefields, and he always wanted me to follow in his footsteps. And my granddad was in the army as well. My granddad was the regimental Christmas tree. Yeah, he didn't see any action, but he was highly decorated. So yeah, I quite like a lot of comedians. I had quite an interesting childhood. I went to the School of Hard Knocks, or as we called it, Jehovah's Witness College, and I was pretty terrible at school. I was pretty terrible academically. For instance, geography was one of my worst lessons. I was always mixing up the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. My teachers said I had a latitude problem. But I did always love sports. So PE was my favourite lesson at school. And I don't know if anyone's about the same age as me. We used to play French cricket when I was at school. I loved French cricket. If you don't know what French cricket is, it's like normal cricket, but with tongues. So I wasn't very good at school, but I've always been quite creative, always been a creative person. And at school in metalwork, I was 12 years old. I made a working fridge. 12 years old, made a working fridge, took it home, and my parents were so proud of me, they stuck it to one of their paintings. So I'm not as sharp as tool in the shed, but I do have a very active brain. I have a lot of questions run through my head, questions that keep me awake at night, to be honest. Questions like, can you get acupuncture to cure pins and needles? Is Cajun chicken the opposite of free range chicken? And one of the biggest questions I have, right, because I love my animals, I love animals, is what to call the underneath of an elephant. I've asked loads of people and no one says there's an agreed term for the underneath of an elephant. Some people call it stomach, some people call it the chest, torso, underbelly, all sorts of different answers, but there's no agreed term for the underneath of an elephant. No, it's a huge grey area. So because this is on a slightly weird thing on my laptop, I'm not entirely sure of how long I've done, but I'll tell you what, I'll tell another joke, I think, and then I'll hand back to Patrick. And Patrick, if you want to ask me any questions or anything, that'd be lovely. So one last thing before I finish my sort of stand-up part of this is I realised this today, right? If you remember nothing else from my set, take this away with you because you can amaze your friends with this, right? If you rearrange, right, I realised this today, if you rearrange the letters of postman, they get really annoyed.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, Tony.
Thank
so
you,
everyone
thank
unmute yourself and give a big round of applause to Tony Cowards.
Yay!
Thank you.
Indeed.
Hey,
Hey.
Tony!
Well done.
Great stuff. That was very, very good, Tony. Thank you, as always. Tony, I've got one question for you, which kind of brings us full circle to where you started, which is, if you were live at the Apollo, who would you want as your warm-up man or warm-up woman, as the comedian that gets people started before the real talent, yourself, comes on the stage at the Apollo?
Oh, that's a very good question. I'm kind of conflicted because in a way you think you'd want one of your comedy heroes, wouldn't you? Someone really, really good to be warm-up, because I love Tim Vine. Obviously, I was a big fan as a kid of Tommy Cooper and Milton Jones. Yeah, lots of people. But in some ways, you want your warm-up person to be reasonably good, but not too good, don't you? Because so I need someone. I'm not going to name any names, but I want someone that I like, but who's not quite as funny as me. Really.
Well, I hope, Tony, that I have fulfilled that role for you this evening to the nth degree. Tony, thank you very much.
You fulfilled that role beautifully, Patrick.
Okay, thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, we're going to have more comedy contributions in just a moment. But for now, I'm going to just do a little bit more in terms of our knowledge about the serious business of the funny side of mental health. We've got lots of examples of depressed patients, people who are in the 50s and 40s, and people in their 70s and 80s going through humor counseling, humor therapy, and it improves their resilience, improves their cheerfulness, alleviates depression, and increases resilience. And in fact, there are actually studies, you might not believe this, about dialysis. A study in Brazil just a few months ago showed that if you have people who are going through dialysis, watching funny programs, particularly funny comedy programs, which are movies, then their anxiety and depression scores are lower. And also, not only that, but there are fewer complications afterwards, such as hypertension or headaches after this session. And we even know from the research that they have a higher percentage of red blood cells. So comedy really can get to the parts where some drugs cannot reach and help people deal with a very not a life-limiting challenge anymore, but certainly something which is burdensome and causes a great deal of stress to individuals, comedy movies can do a great deal of good. And that's research by Morey and her colleagues just last year. However, let's get another good example of the practical side of humour and help, reflection, and comedy from Paul Bassett Davies. Paul is, as I say, an author of many best-selling books. His first novel, Utter Folly, topped the Amazon humorous fiction charts in 2012. His most recent novel, Dead Writers in Rehab, published a few years ago in 2017, and he's now working on a new novel, which he describes as a dystopian comedy thriller. He says, imagine Blade Runner, but with Inspector Clouseau. Paul has done a wide range of activities in film, TV, radio, directing, producing, and performing as a stand-up comedian. But tonight, I believe he's going to draw principally upon his experiences and his thoughts in relation to writing. So once again, I'm going to unmute everyone for the sole purpose of giving it up for Paul Bassett Davies. So let's unmute ourselves. And I'm going to wait till plenty of people have unmuted themselves. And you know the form, you know what I'm going to say, you know when I'm going to say it, and you know what your response is, everyone. So please give it up for Paul Bassett Davies. Thank you.
Yay!
Oh,
yes.
Great. Okay, that's enough cheering. Okay, so Paul, over to you.
Right, I've unmuted myself.
Yeah, we can all hear you, Paul.
Good. I can't see myself. I'm the co-host now. It says I am the captain now.
Yes, okay.
How do I see myself? Well, as side-by-side speaker.
You can pin yourself if you find yourself on the gallery and right-click on your, click on the three little dots, and then there's an option of pin, and that means that you will go bigger.
I'm not getting any of that, Patrick.
Okay.
My view's not working for some reason.
Okay.
Hold on. Standard side-by-side speaker. Let's go for that. No, I'm still just seeing a photograph of me, but never mind. Side-by-side gallery. Oh, here I am. Okay, so if I pin myself.
Yeah, that should help.
Remove. Okay, I'm pinned. I can see. At least I can see myself in a little box.
Okay,
Good.
great. Okay.
Right. Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for your patience. It looks like I'm doing the serious bit, but I will tell a joke at the end. So if I haven't told a joke by the end, somebody, Patrick, remind me to tell a joke. But I am going to talk about my own experience, and I'll just dive straight in with that, which is about 20 years ago. I was diagnosed with a chronic illness called Crohn's disease, and it got quite bad quite quick. It got pretty chronic, pretty acute, and I think it sort of wanted to do me in to a certain extent. And it was painful and debilitating, and I just had various bouts of this, that, and the other. And anyway, started engaging with the medical establishment in a much closer and more intimate way than I'd ever really wanted to. And ended up spending more time in seeing the insides of hospitals than I'd ever really wanted to, because I had to go in and out of hospital quite a lot, and I had about 4, 5, or 6 actually major operations, major surgical interventions, in which they removed various parts of my insides. And the slightly upsetting thing is that they don't even keep them. I think they just throw them away. I'm not expecting them to gift wrap them, but it does strike me that they've taken these bits out of me. The least they could do is sort of show them to me, but they don't even do that. I expect they're probably too busy. Anyway, so as a result of all of this, it got pretty grim for me, and I got quite low at certain points, got quite depressed, and also got from my doctor a diagnosis of mild clinical depression. And those are two different things. I'm very aware, and I think everybody needs to remember that. Depression is an illness, and feeling depressed is what happens to you when you hear people talking bullshit about depression. So there is a distinction between those two things, but I did get a bit of a clinical depression. and did a bit of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which kind of, yeah, that seemed to help. But what really helped was writing. And I'll tell you why. It's because I couldn't do anything else, very little else. But the one thing I could do was write, because I've always been a writer. Was a comedy writer for a very long time, not exclusively comedy, but quite a lot of comedy. And I'd always wanted to write a novel. So I kind of turned poison into medicine, as the Buddhists say, and used the opportunity of being pretty much stuck at home to write a novel I'd wanted to write for a long time. And that was my first novel. It was called Utter Folly. And I just want to correct Patrick. I've actually, my most recent novel was called Please Do Not Ask for Mercy, as a refusal often offends. And I've got another one coming out this September. But what the reason writing was such a gift for me, and such a, in a sense, a blessing that I've had this, I'd always been a writer, was that I found that writing gave me an opportunity to have my illness not fill the screen, and my illness and the feeling low about it and feeling depressed about it. It's always there, and I think this is a common experience for a lot of people who either suffer from depression or have chronic illnesses or just feel crap a lot of the time, is that the problem is that it fills the screen. It looms right in front of you and you can't see around it. And for me, being able to write, particularly this first novel, which was called Utter Folly, which was it was a kind of English country house novel, kindly described by my then agent as being P.G. Wodehouse on mescaline, which I think was a pretty fair summary. But it enabled me to spend hours at a time being somewhere else, and to a certain extent, being someone else. It enabled me to see around that big looming screen and to find another place to be. So that then the result of that was that I didn't have to be, I could, for several hours at a time, I didn't have to be that person sitting at home being the ill person, the sick person. And I think that relates to the experience that some people have, which is that when you have an illness or a condition like that, the struggle is that it defines you. And what you want to do is not have it define you. You don't want to have that huge reality filling your screen. You want to be able to somehow see around it. And the great thing about writing and being able to invent another world to be in, and as I say, it's a way of, you know, writing a book, writing a novel. I'd invented another world that I could spend time in, where I could forget about being a sick person sitting at home. And as I say, I think that does that sensation of finding a way for your illness not to define you, particularly if it's mental health. You don't want to be defined by that. It's not going to go away so much as you are able to expand your life around it. It's a bit like one of the best descriptions I've come across about learning to live with grief, which is that if you're bereaved, that bereavement is like a circle, and for a while that circle is your life. That circle overlaps exactly with your life, and it never gets smaller, that grief. But what happens is your life expands gradually around it. And so while that circle is still the same size, the rest of your life has enlarged itself so that you have something else going on, some other place to be from which to look at it. So as I say, it doesn't shrink or diminish, the rest of your life expands. And that's really what writing offers me in this context that we're talking about today, about mental health. And it's in microcosm, that's the way a joke works, actually, because a joke is a way of short-circuiting your brain. It flips a switch, it suddenly takes you out of your normal thinking patterns. And let's face it, when you've got into a situation where it's your normal thinking patterns that have got you into trouble in the first place, that is to say, made you feel low in the first place, you can't think your way out of that. You need to just be somewhere else. Now, the classic prescription is go for a walk. But if you can't get out and go for a walk outside, you can go for a walk in your head. And in a sense, that's what a joke is doing. It's flipping you out of your normal lines, of your normal point of view, your normal perception. it's just forcing you by that little kind of logical short circuit. It's making you think in a different space. Now, we could go on for a long, long time about how that process actually works, but I don't think it's time right now for me to analyze it. But I think if you think of the freedom that we're all looking for in terms of particularly mental health, I think comedy, writing for me, but also comedy, jokes, laughter, they all fulfill that function of being able to enable you to look around that huge looming screen that seems to be filling your horizon, and suddenly you can see around it, you can see something else, you can see the rest of the world, because you've been flipped out of your seat, as it were. I think that's probably all I've got to say. I don't know how long I've been speaking.
Oh no, that's great, Paul. Thank you. Gosh,
Okay,
that was so
I've got
much
to
in
do my
there.
joke then.
Well, you by all means, but you did. I thought it was funny when you said that major depression is one thing, but feeling depressed is how you feel when people talk bullshit about.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of that going on, but
If
here
you've
we
got
go.
another joke, go for it.
I've got it. No, this is a proper joke. This is
Go on,
like
go on.
telling you like this because this is my favourite joke in the world, and it's an old Tommy Cooper joke, and it's kind of on topic. So here you go. Man goes to a psychiatrist. He says, "Doctor, you've got to help me." Psychiatrist says, "All right." I said, "What's the problem? What can I do?" The man says, "Oh, it's awful, doctor. It's awful. I keep thinking I'm a dog." The psychiatrist says, "All right, calm down. Now just lie on the couch." The man says, "Oh, I'm not allowed on the couch."
Very good. Okay, everyone,
Okay.
unmute and let's give it up for Paul Bassett-Davies. Thank you very much indeed, Paul. Thank you. And just to make amends for not mentioning Paul's most recent book, I've put the link to the web page in the chat for everyone to follow up on that. My favorite Tommy Cooper joke is when he said, "I've just started the whiskey diet. I've lost 2 weeks already." Okay, so let's everyone mute themselves, please, as we go into our next little section. Okay, so all we're trying to do here is continue after Paul's brilliant contribution. I'm just going to say one or two more words about laughter and laughter therapy. Some very recent research has shown that laughter therapy can work for a whole range of people. It lowers blood pressure, heart rate, reduces depression, and improves sociability and activity. But more than that, you can do humor therapy. And to put it in a nutshell, there are lots of really good activities we can do with clients and with ourselves in everyday life. And some of them are as simple as writing down the 3 funniest things that happened to you today. Because very often when we're anxious, when we're angry, when we're distracted, when we've got low self-esteem, when we've had a bad day at work, when we're depressed, our mind is automatically jumping to conclusions. It's filtering out all the good stuff. It's being vigilant. It's trying to identify threats and just counteracting that by something as simple as writing down the 3 funniest things that happened, and to ask yourself also, what are the 3 funniest things that have ever happened to me? How many funny things are there by the day of the week? It almost doesn't matter how you process the idea of funny, as long as you can, because people already have that laughter inside of them. It's not about training them to be better at telling jokes or better at having a better sense of humor. Whatever on earth that might mean, it's just helping people who are maybe going through a bad time, amongst many, many, many other things that you can do for them to help them, is to get them to reach out to find that part of their mind that still wants to and still can enjoy humor. And one of really specific thing which I came across a couple of years ago was a great technique is to have people role play auditioning for the part of a laughing extra. So they're not up front next to the camera, they're sitting in the background, but they're laughing. And it is so funny, people enjoy doing it so much. And of course, the very act of trying to be a self-effacing extra in a film, but who's laughing all the time, is itself funny. And so people start laughing naturally. So lots of really interesting ways of playing around with that idea. And one of the really fundamental questions is asking someone, well, what was the last time you made someone laugh How did you feel when you did that? Is that something which you would like to be able to try and pull off again? Okay, so as we move towards the end of our session this evening, we have, last but not least, a wonderful young comedian and actor from New York. She is, in fact, live from New York, even as we speak. Amanda Lynn Bays, based in New York, been acting since she was 15. She got her first lead role as Marella in Nilo Cruz's play Anna in the Tropics. She has performed at the Hunasika Black Box Theatre in Wayne, New Jersey, and started stand-up at the age of 19 and began performing at major clubs in New York City, such as the Gotham Comedy Club, Caroline's, and the Broadway Comedy Club by the age of 20. Kenny Warren has described her as a person who has been born funny. But she's here for this evening, and once again, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and wait for the cue as we hand over to our next, third and final performer this evening. So if you have unmuted and you're ready, then ladies and gentlemen, I would ask you to please give a warm round of applause for Amanda Lynn Bays. Thank you.
Hey!
Yay.
Hello. Hi. Okay, am I on? You guys
You're
see
on.
me? You good? Okay. Hi. Oh, that's a really good photo of me. I was like 30 pounds lighter. Can I just say I'm loving the accents. You all already sound more educated than I do. But yeah, thank you, by the way, Patrick, for having me on. It's truly an honor, and I'm glad to talk about comedy and do this routine I have. So everyone laughs, we're human, we love to laugh. And when a baby falls, what's the right thing to do? You laugh because it makes them feel like everything's okay. Comedians love to discuss things that are hard to talk about, but we joke about them. It's what helps me cope. So I'm hoping it helps everyone else cope. With COVID, it took a toll on everyone. And, with this new vaccine out, everyone is skeptical. But honestly, you probably shouldn't be afraid to get the vaccine if you've eaten McDonald's, okay? The regret you feel after eating McDonald's is just criminal. It's baffling. But we're going to just laugh about all of that later. Because of this damn virus and the clubs being shut down, I even lost my rhythm, my ultimate mating call. I can't even dance. Life has just been a pure struggle, but things are getting better. Laughter is the best medicine. Seriously, it is. It's healthy to shed light on dark situations. Life is, it's just honestly one big fever dream. Life is, I like to look at it that way. It's like, it's a roller coaster. It's being a human. It's weird. We smell, we sometimes can't control what happens in life. And that's what makes life fun. You're going to have those ups and you're going to have those downs. I've been arrested in the past. Those were one of my downs in life, but hey, now I laugh about it, because it makes up for a great story. We learn, for me personally, as a comedian, we learn to normalize our situations, that people can definitely relate to. See how ridiculous life most certainly can be. If you can't afford to go to therapy, go to a comedy show. That's it's great to laugh. Like I said, it's the best medicine. So comedy, it can't change the world, but it definitely can change how you view it. And laugh at shit that other people take seriously. Laugh at other people's expenses. Laugh at just being human at the end of the day, because entertainment is such an escape, and it's an art takes you just out of your reality, and it's good. it's just good to bring laughter to everyday struggles, normalizing struggles. You can't feel shitty for the most part of your day or the most part of your week, because it'll just make you sick. It'll drive you insane. It'll drive me insane. I'd rather eat a glass cup than remain sad just because my country is going to shit, you know? So let's just joke about it. Let's laugh about it later. Patrick, or if any of you psychiatrists or therapists, if you guys later on want to stay, I'd love to have a therapy session, because I too have a lot of trauma. But I just learn to laugh about it, and that's just life. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much indeed, Amanda. That's brilliant. Thank you. So everyone unmute and let's give it up for Amanda Lynn Baez.
Woo! Thank you. Oh, Patrick, I think you're muted.
He's still muted, isn't he?
Patrick, you're still muted.
Amanda, Phil.
There we go. No, I'd unmuted myself on Zoom, but my keyboard had fallen on top of my special control panel. Okay, so we won't be having the group therapy whereby instead of having 30 clients and one therapist, we would have for Amanda 1 client and 30 therapists. I think by any stretch of the imagination, that's going to be a bit tough on everyone. But thank you very much indeed for that, Amanda. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you. So what I'd like to do now is I want to put us to a position whereby we can take some questions in the chat from the audience. I have some additional questions which have come in when people registered, and some questions we've had earlier. So if you have any questions from the panel for any of our 3 performers or for myself, then please put them in the chat and we will get our talent to give it their best shot. So here are some of the questions that came in earlier, just to get us started. So a question for all 3 of our panelists: what is the most emotionally positive way of dealing with a heckler? So I'm going to, and Paul doesn't do so much stand-up nowadays, so maybe Paul can take that question in the context of dealing with a bad review. Not that Paul gets many bad reviews, I hasten to add. But Paul, what are your thoughts on how you might deal with I don't know, a negative review on Amazon about one of your top-selling books?
I think the best negative review I ever got, actually, by the way, on Amazon was something that objected to the bad language in my first novel. That said, and it said, I've objected to the use of bad language, especially on the first page. You know, it's like as though if I'd just waited a few pages and then started with all the new stuff. I thought it was a bit weird. But what I tend to do, Patrick, is in negativity in a review or something, I'm a great believer in the power of voodoo. So I think that what I do is I try not to focus on the negative review. I try to focus my craft and my skill on the lifelike little doll that I carve out of wax, and then the places where I can stick the pin into this extremely realistic model. I think, really, to sum up, I think the writer's friends are whiskey and voodoo, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
Thanks, Paul. Clearly not an official part of the NICE guidelines for dealing with criticism and threat. Maybe they should be. And I think we're all feeling now that it might have been helpful if I told everyone that that was Paul's go-to strategy for getting a bad review. We would have all have applauded that little bit more enthusiastically to avoid getting the actual or virtual pins stuck in us, which reminds me of Tony's joke, which I loved a bit. Can you use acupuncture to cure pins and needles? I think that's my takeaway for this evening from Tony. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, Tony, what is your most emotionally supportive, most emotionally compassionate, most emotionally positive way of dealing with a heckler?
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to certainly take up Paul's suggestion of voodoo. That sounds like a great idea. I think the way I do, my persona on stage is very unconfrontational, really. So I tend to try to just be unfailingly polite back to them. And if they've been quite mean to me and I've been polite to them, generally the audience will be completely on my side. And then if I really want to, if they keep persistently heckling, then I might get turned slightly mean and just be a little bit mean. But by that time, I know that the audience are fully behind me,
Yeah.
and totally against the heckler. But I don't know about the other guys, but heckling seems to be one of these things that is what everyone thinks happens all the time at comedy shows, but actually it's fairly rare. And good heckles are even rarer. They're like hen's teeth. Good heckles. Most heckles are just some drunken person just going rah, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Make out what they've said. Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, as heckle, I much prefer heckles than just complete apathy from the audience as well. Like if you do a gig where just completely anything else as to whether you, that was a good heckle. I don't know what that is. A phone going off is always a good. There's not a lot you can do with that.
They're going to have to mute themselves again rather than do it manually. Yeah, no.
My suggestion is just be, if them being mean to you, just be unfailingly polite back, because it just makes them look even meaner.
So I guess you just say, well, give your mum my best regards. She's a lovely lady.
Yeah, that's quite nice, because that's quite polite, but it's also slightly suggestive of something.
Well, hey, tell us about it. Amanda, how do you deal with hecklers in a positive, compassionate, nurturing way?
Oh man, I honestly love them. I'm like, keep them coming. Just use them as a prop. Use them as a prop. I remember this old dude, this old guy. He was so drunk, and he was like, "Take off your clothes," and I was like, "You take off your clothes." And I looked at him, and I'm like, "Oh no, never mind. Like, you're old and wrinkly. Never mind." Like, you just kind of like play. I don't know, and then he shuts up. You just kind of have to use them as a prop at that point. And if they keep going, then like Tony said, the audience is on your side at this point, and eventually they'll get kicked out.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I try my best to look at it as if it was crowd work, like unexpected crowd work. I didn't ask you a question, but you are talking. So I'll try to like shut them up in the best way possible and not be nasty and rude, but just make it funny, because as a comic you got to be, I hope most comedians like at least take an improv class or know what improv is, so you can easily just snap back. Like, you're like, okay, they said this, I'm going to say this back. Like, this seems appropriate to say, or this seems, whatever your boundary is. I don't they can be annoying, but it, like Tony said, it's very rare. It's not always an issue, but when it comes about, I look at it as a challenge. So
yeah, sure. So it's the only way. Absolutely.
yeah.
I don't know if any counselors or therapists are also stand-ups. I guess a therapist, if they're heckled, might just say, well, tell me more about this feeling you have that my act sucks. I don't know. Okay, so there are more questions coming in. Here's a good one that someone's put in the chat. And Amanda, you might not be aware, but in Britain we've recently had a big thing about the Prime Minister appointing a brand new spokesperson, and that job's been appointed to now. They've got a brand new press conference unit. But in the US, of course, you've had a change of administration, so there's a difference there too. But the question is, should the government appoint a professional comedian to be the official spokesperson in order to improve the standard of Downing Street briefings? So, Paul, are you any thoughts on that one?
They've already got one, haven't they?
Tony, what are your thoughts on a professional comedian being a spokesperson for the government?
Sorry, was that to me, Patrick?
Yeah, Tony, yeah.
Laughing at what Paul says. I don't know. I mean, it'd pep up the speeches a little bit, wouldn't it? But
yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I think if you inject a bit of humour, it's a good way of getting a serious point across. But I'm not sure at the moment we need, as Paul sort of suggested, that we need more jokers in government around the world at the moment. I think there's there's plenty in there we
Indeed.
could actually do with some boring politicians that can actually concentrate on doing a good job of being a politician.
Indeed. Amanda, if you had the chance to pick your job as being the spokesperson, the public ambassador for one of the US administration agencies, which one would you pick? Defense, healthcare, the State Department?
As you guys can all imagine how the US is doing, I don't even want to be a part of any political, nothing, just nothing. I mean, our previous president, he should have been a comedian, honestly. He was saying things comedians should say, not a politician. So I feel like we already had a clown run the country, so.
Indeed. Well, I think that's a great note to finish on, because history has taught us very few things. But one thing it has taught us is that there's one thing which powerful people can't stand, which is being made fun of. Satire and humor is a very, very powerful device. And I think many of us in therapy and counselling know the power of humor in the counselling room. We do get tears and laughter at the same time. We do get laughter as a client recognises a new perspective on, like coming back to the point that was made earlier about when Amanda said that you can't change the world with comedy, but you can change a perspective on the world. But sometimes if you're down in the dumps, sometimes if you're feeling pessimistic, if you're anxious, and if you're angry, sometimes all you need right there and right then is to get a new perspective on the world. And that can not only take the edge off, but give you a whole new platform for the next stage. So there's certainly a lot of different elements of that. So thank you very much indeed to our three panelists this evening. Thank you to everyone who's come along tonight for what is a one-off. I don't know about anyone else, but I've thoroughly enjoyed this, which is the main thing. Thank you. I see a lot of new faces this evening who have come along, and some of our friends and colleagues who have been here with us before at Practical CBT. If you would like to get more information about any of the shows or any of the books or any of the websites of our three contributors this evening, you'll find basic information on the Eventbrite page. And when I send out a little thank you email to everyone, I'll make sure that I put in those links so that you can follow up some of the ideas and information and writing and performances that our colleagues are doing all the time, COVID or not. So once again, a final unmuting and a final collective show of appreciation, if you would be so kind. If you would be so kind. To everyone, to our panelists. So Paul, Amanda, Tony, thank you. Tony, thank you. Great. Okay, everyone, we'll have a great weekend. And please do, if you get a chance, contribute. I know that times are tough for many people. Thank you ever so much once again for the very, very generous donations that you have made. And I would ask you to try and make sure that if you are able to contribute a little bit more this evening or over the weekend for Comic Relief, that you are able to do so. But otherwise, thank you very much indeed for your participation. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your applause. And once again, thank you to our three amazing contributors this evening, Paul, Tony, and Amanda. Thank you very much indeed. We'll leave it there. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.